So what we're gonna do is I am a fitness trainer and I am gonna try 5 TikTok famous fitness items. So out of those items, the things I tried were that famous hula hoop, the weighted hula hoop, the balance trainer, the Amazon Basics balance trainer, a 1-inch thick yoga mat, the Death Cycle 2, I tried the second one, and then the Sweet Sweat waist trimmer. For a quick rundown so you get the whole feel of it, the only things that I recommend are the yoga mat, the Death Cycle, and I kind of recommend the hula hoop, the weighted hula hoop. Everything else is a no-go for me. So let's get into it. So I am a ACE certified personal trainer and group fitness instructor. I've been teaching for about 6 to 7 years now. I specialized in boxing, and some of you guys know I am certified to teach F45 if you're familiar with that program as well. I've trained multiple clients, I have a lot of experience with fitness, and I just understand the aspects that go throughout the body to build muscle, lose fat, and all that good stuff. So I want to show whether or not these things are effective as we go through them. I'm going to use something called ratings of perceived exertion. So this is a rating scale from 1 to 10, 1 being like we are right now, just talking, real chill, not breathing really fast, just regular. Then 10 is going to be working super hard, you can't even talk, you're gasping for air, you're struggling as you're pushing through. That's going to be what a 10 is considered. So you'll see me bring this up a lot, especially to compare the equipment to the actual equipment, or to just show you how much I feel like you can get a workout out of it. So the first thing is the 1-inch thick yoga mat. I actually received this as a gift a couple years ago, so I've had it for a while and I use it all the time. I do really enjoy it a lot. I highly recommend if you have a lot of knee pain or if doing workouts on the floor feels very uncomfortable. A lot of times you'll see, especially Pilates instructors, have you fold the mat, but with this mat you don't need to fold it. There's just a couple caveats with it that I always like to mention, and that is it does stretch a little bit because it's thicker than a yoga mat. It does have some more elasticity to it and it does stretch a little bit more. And it can be slick from time to time, but that's also applicable for many yoga mats. I know they're starting to make more that actually don't get as slick, but this one's a little slick. Then going into the wooden balance board. This was an Amazon Basics item, I believe, and I had so much hope for this one. I really did. I also have experience with what's called a balance trainer, also known as a Bosu ball, where it has the rubber on the bottom. The balance board has plastic on the bottom, and you'll see why that's an issue in a little bit. That plastic bottom on hardwood was so slick. Like I literally just could not get it to stay still. You slid all over the place. I tried it on carpet, I tried it on the mat, I've tried it on everything, and it still just spins a little bit too much for comfort. When you get onto a Bosu ball, it doesn't spin like that because of the rubber bottom. It allows it to not spin, which is where the issue comes along. Knowing how hard it can be on a balance trainer, this was just out of the park, way too hard. Like, it just required too much. I needed to hold on to something just to keep it from spinning, and the spinning aspect isn't something that necessarily can be prevented with core work or things like that. I'll also say it had a rough surface. So this is the surface of the balance trainer right here. I'm trying to get it to focus, but this is super rough. It's made so that you don't slide on it, but it also just feels very uncomfortable if you try to do a plank on it or anything like that. And when you put your feet on it, you can't move them. Like your feet will stay in place, which seems good in theory, but a lot of times when you get on balance trainers, you need to adjust, and you can't do that here. Instead, I would recommend a balance trainer or a Bosu ball rather than getting that. I know those are usually a little more expensive, but they actually are more functional because a Bosu ball, you can flip it over and also use the other side, while this, you can't use the other side. The Sweet Sweat waist trimmer. So I know you often hear about waist trainers a lot for people working out, and as a fitness trainer, I do not advise a waist trainer at all for multiple reasons that do kind of apply to this waist trimmer. Now, what makes the waist trimmer different? The waist trimmer has this rubber on the inside of it and that allows you to sweat more. And I'll definitely agree, it does make you sweat. It gets you warm. And with excessive sweating, you lose water and salts in your body and can result into losing a pound or so. I think this is definitely the benefit a lot of people see out of using a sweat waist trimmer, but I don't necessarily recommend it. Losing water weight is just temporary. You'll gain it back as soon as you drink another glass of water or as soon as you eat something. This is often seen by celebrities and bodybuilders, where they'll do it to just lose one last pound right before a shoot or right before a competition. I don't recommend that for the layperson at all, just because it's not sustainable. I did want to give this actually a fair chance, so I actually taught with it on, and then I compared it to teaching without having it on. I will say my heart rate stayed pretty much the same. There was no difference. I mean, I got a little more sweat. It was very wet around my abdominal area, but that was kind of it. Now, comparing the ratings of perceived exertion, when I'm regularly teaching, I'm around a 6. Getting my heart rate up, I'm usually doing boxing, so of course it is a lot more activity as a trainer. But with the sweet sweat, I would say my rating of perceived exertion was a 4. And there's a reason for that, for why it's lower. When you wrap that so tightly around your core, it forces you to sit straight up and be in that alert position, active and everything. As a result, you don't necessarily have to engage your core as much. And this is also why I don't recommend waist trainers as well. Because when you have things that put structure right underneath your rib cage and suck your belly in, that makes it so that you don't have to rely on your core when you're doing exercises. And you may say, oh, I already have a weak core, so obviously I don't want to, I want to use this item to make sure that I can keep my core straight and have correct form. Relying on this will make it so that your core is weaker in the long run. If you need to be stronger, you need to work on your core. Just work on getting it stronger, and with every exercise you will engage the core, or at least you should try to. If you're finding that you're not engaging your core while doing an exercise, you may need to regress it a little bit. Lower down the intensity. But I do not advise using a waist trainer or a waist trimmer as a replace for engaging your core. If your doctor is to advise that you have something that supports your core, there are different devices that they can provide you to use that. I would not recommend getting something off of Amazon to do that. Onto the weighted hula hoop. I know I used to love to hula hoop as a kid. Like, it was so fun, and you just had a blast, you could play music and all that good stuff. So like, hula hooping as an adult makes sense, and especially having a weighted hula hoop makes sense too, right? I'll admit, the weighted hula hoop does get your heart rate up, which is good. Getting your heart rate up is the first step of working out. But then I had to come to grips with the fact that I may have forgotten how to hula hoop. It definitely was harder to get the momentum going so that you can get that little sandbag to go around you. And it's a very limited movement, which is not like dancing. Like, it's not as expressive, and you get so bored so easily. Like, I literally did it for 30 minutes. I hula hooped for 30 minutes with that thing. And I was bored out of my mind. I had music playing, but I couldn't do that every day. Like, I'd lose my patience. Also, it's so loud, like, because it has the tracks and the rails that it has to ride on. That gets so loud. You might be better off getting an actual weighted hula hoop rather than the one that goes on the track, because it makes so much noise. Listen to how loud it is. When I rate it on the ratings of perceived exertion, I'd give it a 4. So it's not that high, but it gets you up a little bit, your heart rate pumping. I had a max heart rate of 154, which isn't bad, but that was the highest it got, and then it never returned there. I did notice it caused some pain to the body, so right around the rib cage where you actually strap in, that force of the sandbag coming around started pushing into the body. Ironically, I feel like using the Sweet Sweat trainer on top of that did help a little bit. And last, but certainly not least, was the desk cycle. This was the most expensive thing that I got off of Amazon, but I heard about it so much and I had to try. There was a lot to set up. There's a lot of little tools. It even came with like a little wrench, and it was pretty heavy. So take that in mind if you're gonna get it. But it was solid. I did try it under my desk to try working with it. I feel like there's some caveats with that for sure. The main thing is, and this might just be me, but I feel like a lot of people can't mindfully do two things at once. Like we multitask all the time, but we can do stuff mindlessly while doing something else. But when I was working at my desk and I was editing or working on designs, anytime I got really focused, I would stop pedaling. I wouldn't be working out anymore. And I would just forget, like I wouldn't even notice. I feel like it's hard because we don't want to think about it, but sometimes you have to actively focus on pedaling and then you're not able to focus on your work. Additionally, I had troubles with my desk. So with how close I needed to be to my desk to reach the computer and all that good stuff, but then my desk wasn't high enough in order to actually pedal, so my knees were hitting the bottom of the desk and it just became a whole mess. That is also something to consider, is whether you have the space underneath your desk to be able to do that and to get it to give you a good workout. But I did try it while watching TV, being that that is a more mindless habit, or on social media or anything like that, and that did work. I definitely recommend it for that. I did compare 30 minutes of the desk cycle to 30 minutes of spinning, so that's just using a regular bike. I'll say the desk cycle was way more comfortable, obviously, because you get to pick the chair that you use. I had a max heart rate of 142, but it did go a little more steady. And ratings of perceived exertion for me were around a 6. You can increase the resistance, so that way you'd have more perceived exertion, and you control the pace. But when it comes to really getting down to business, nothing beats the real thing. So when spinning on an actual bike, now those seats aren't comfortable. Like I think they do that on purpose. But my max heart rate got up to 183 and stayed relatively steady. That's pretty high. Going into anaerobic exercise, which is that real high level of exercise. And my rating of perceived exertion was a 9. So I worked really hard on that. Still did the 30 minutes, but I still recommend the desk cycle. It still works, even if it's not as intense as a regular bike. These are just a few items off of TikTok. Please be sure to let me know if you have other fitness items that you'd like me to try out, and actually let you know if they actually work or do anything, because I would love to do more like this. Like this was actually kind of fun. Took me a little while, but it was fun. Be sure to also subscribe if you're interested in more content like this. Like I said, this is my area of expertise, so I love to share more of my knowledge with everybody to make sure that fitness is more accessible, along with wellness being more accessible. The biggest issue that I find with trying to buy all these products is people want to be able to work out without thinking about it. And I mean, I want to too. I would love to not think about it while I'm working out. But I think to get the effectiveness out of some of these items, especially like the hula hoop or the desk cycle, you rely on what's called the mind-muscle connection. So when you're working those muscles, so such as hula hooping, if you actually think into your mind like, okay, I'm working my core as I do this, then you'll actually engage your core and actually work the core more than if you just mindlessly did it. Same thing with the desk cycle. If you're actually thinking like, okay, I'm using my legs, my glutes, my quads to actually push the pedals, then you'll actually engage those muscles and work them rather than just letting it go through its cycle. If you want a way to be able to tell which fitness influencers are legit or not, check out this video up here. And if you want to see if your workplace is toxic and how to set workplace boundaries, check out this video down here. I always appreciate you guys for watching, and remember, the only way out is through.